All right, folks, it's that time of the year again. The air is buzzing with speculation, and the draft is right around the corner. As we count down the hours to Thursday night, I'm here to lay out my final list of 13 players who I truly believe could be realistic options for the Pittsburgh Steelers in the first round. Now, before we dive deep into breakdown, let me throw it to you. Go ahead and drop your predictions in the comments. Who do you think the Steelers are taking this year? Could it be a new quarterback to stir up the room? Will they lean on the defensive side and bring in a young disruptor? Maybe they shock everyone with a running back? Or, who knows, maybe there's a trade on the table that could shake everything up. Let's get that conversation going now, because this draft night might be wilder than most people are expecting. Now, to start this off, I want to focus on the quarterback situation. There's been a ton of chatter lately about what Pittsburgh is going to do at that position, especially since the departure of Aaron Rodgers left a vacuum in that role. Will they pull the trigger on a quarterback in the first round? Or will they wait it out, maybe look at that position in the third or fourth? The uncertainty is real right now, and the noise around the Steelers and quarterbacks is only getting louder. Some insiders are saying the team has been seriously evaluating a few prospects, particularly one standout from the University of Alabama who seems to be getting a lot of attention behind closed doors. From everything I've seen, heard, and analyzed based on what makes sense for the Steelers' current roster construction and future direction, if they do go for a quarterback in the first round, I truly think the Alabama kid is the frontrunner. He checks a lot of boxes, and the fit just feels right. And no, I'm not just pulling this out of thin air. We've covered this quarterback in depth in a separate video. So if you want all the nitty-gritty, you can check that out. But for now, let's just say there are legitimate reasons to believe he could be the guy under center next season if the front office decides to go that route. Of course, this is all just informed speculation. No one outside the Steelers' war room knows for sure. This is the season of smoke screens, misdirection, and last-minute surprises. But I'll stand by my prediction. If it's a quarterback, that's the one I see them betting on. And again, I want to hear from you. If you're on board with the quarterback idea, tell me in the comments who you'd want to see in black and gold. Type out your favorites, use some initials, whatever works. Let's build a thread and turn this into the go-to conversation starter for Steelers fans heading into Thursday night. Now, while quarterback is a hot topic, we can't ignore the other areas Pittsburgh could focus on. Running back is another interesting angle. There's been a lot of scouting attention on this position, and although one of the top prospects might be off the board by the time the Steelers pick, there's still a very realistic chance they could grab one of the others who's been shining throughout the college season, especially if they think he fits the scheme well and offers the kind of physicality and vision they need in the backfield. There's also a wild card scenario where the Steelers trade up or down, and depending on how that shakes out, different names might come into play. But based on everything we know now, there are two running backs who make the most sense for Pittsburgh at that spot. One of them has a versatile skill set, solid college production, and the kind of build that matches what the team traditionally values in their offensive identity. If they make a move and land one of these guys, it wouldn't shock me. Defensively, there are a couple of names that stand out as well, particularly a defensive tackle, where Pittsburgh could use some depth and long-term development. One of the prospects who's caught my eye might raise a few eyebrows due to past injury concerns. But let's not forget that this front office has taken chances before on players with similar red flags. They do their homework, they know what risks are worth taking, and if the medicals check out, I wouldn't be surprised if they pulled the trigger. There's also another D tackle on the board that has great upside and fewer health question marks, and he fits the mold of someone who could contribute right away, especially on rotational snaps early in the season. Given how grueling the AFC North matchups are in the trenches, bulking up the defensive line isn't just a want, it might be a need. Now, when it comes to the cornerback spot, the picture gets a little more layered. It doesn't seem likely that Pittsburgh will go after a developmental corner in the first round. From what I've been seeing, they're looking for someone who can step in and contribute from day one, someone who's polished, experienced, and versatile. And there's a particular prospect from Texas who fits that bill. He's got the kind of physicality and technique that make him a strong candidate to line up in the slot and really hold his ground against some of the quicker receivers in the league. This guy's background as a former boxer brings a unique edge to his game. He's aggressive at the line, doesn't shy away from contact, and had an impressive showing at this year's combine. He didn't make the list for an official top 30 visit, but that doesn't mean the Steelers aren't interested. They had a formal meeting with him during the combine, and that shows there's at least some level of intrigue. He could absolutely be in the mix, depending on how the board falls. Shifting over to the safety position, and this is where things get even more intriguing. There's really only one safety prospect that seems like a legitimate first-round consideration this year, and he comes out of South Carolina. The Steelers have done their homework here. They brought him in for an official visit, had a meeting with him at the combine, and the interest is pretty obvious. Physically, the guy is a beast. Big, fast, explosive. He hit a perfect score on the relative athletic scale, which is no small feat. But even with all that athletic potential, there are some concerns, especially when it comes to his run defense. For a guy his size, he's not diagnosing plays as quickly as you'd like. His average tackle depth is over 7 yards, which is not great when you're trying to prevent chunk plays on the ground. Sure, he can make open field tackles, and he's got range, but if the Steelers want someone who can stuff the run and provide more immediate reliability, they might hesitate on using a first-rounder here. Still, I could see him fitting into a bandit safety role, that hybrid third safety look that's been gaining popularity with some creative defensive coordinators. And since we know the Steelers have been experimenting with those kind of packages, he's still very much on the radar. Now, we'll get into the receivers and trade possibilities in the next stretch, because that whole situation is another beast entirely, especially with contract talks looming and potential shakeups coming this offseason. Let's now turn the spotlight to the wide receiver situation in Pittsburgh, which might be one of the most complex and layered storylines heading into this year's draft. If you've been following closely, you already know that there's been some behind-the-scenes buzz about the future of a current key receiver on roster. The conversation revolves not just around his talent, which, to be fair, is undeniable, but also his contract situation, his perceived attitude, and whether or not the Steelers see him as part of the long-term picture. That's what makes this such a fascinating angle. If the team were to pull the trigger on a trade during the draft, suddenly, the idea of grabbing a receiver in the first round becomes a whole lot more plausible. Now, if nothing changes and that receiver stays on the roster past the weekend, then maybe the urgency disappears. But if there's even a small chance that a team offers something attractive enough, say a second-round pick, I believe Pittsburgh would at least entertain the idea. That said, I personally don't expect any team to come forward with a second-round offer, especially considering the concerns floating around about off-field discipline and overall reliability. It's one thing to be a first or second-round talent, but when you add in the red flags, teams start backing off or discounting the value significantly. Realistically, I think the best offer the Steelers might get is a fourth-round pick, maybe even a fifth. And if that's all that's on the table, then the front office probably won't make a move right now. But let's say, hypothetically, they do decide to move him, or they want to prepare for life after his contract expires. In that case, there are 3 receiver prospects who make sense and have caught the team's eye during this draft cycle. One of them had a formal meeting with the organization, but wasn't brought in for a top 30 visit. That could mean the team already feels comfortable enough with his background and character to not need a second look. Or it could just be strategy. There's always some gamesmanship involved this time of year. Among these 3, one seems slightly less favored compared to the other 2, but they're all still very much in play if Pittsburgh ends up picking a wide receiver in the first. And while none of these guys are necessarily slam-dunk, plug-and-play stars on day one, they all have traits that could help the team fill a critical need, especially if the Steelers are thinking about balancing their offense a bit more and giving whoever's under center a more reliable arsenal. You can't rely on just 1 or 2 guys at receiver, not in this league, not in this division. You need depth, speed, toughness, and someone who can win those one-on-one battles outside the numbers. That's where these draft prospects come in. Beyond that, there's also a subtle layer to all of this involving locker room dynamics and leadership. Sometimes, a move like drafting a wide receiver high isn't just about talent. It's about sending a message, shaking things up a bit, resetting the culture. And I think that's something to keep in mind when you look at the big picture here. The Steelers have a reputation for valuing character, work ethic, and long-term fit over just raw athletic upside. If they do take a receiver early, It's going to be someone they believe in beyond just the stat sheet. Now back to the idea of trades, not just involving players, but moving up or down the board. There's a genuine possibility the Steelers don't stay put at their current slot. Depending on how the first few picks unfold, and whether there's a run on a particular position, we could see them trade back to gain extra capital or even leap forward to grab someone they're really high on. And in that scenario, names that seem just out of reach could suddenly become realistic targets. This draft class is deep in certain spots, but thin in others, so positioning will be key. And speaking of key positions, let's circle back to defense for a moment. Specifically the idea of using more 3 safety sets. This is something that's been gaining traction not just with the Steelers, but across the league. Defenses are evolving, and so are the schemes. Versatility is everything now. Having a guy who can line up as a traditional free safety one snap, drop into the box the next, and then cover a slot receiver right after. That's gold. That's why even if the Steelers don't take a safety in the first round, I wouldn't be surprised if they grabbed one by day 2. There's a clear interest in building out that package. The prospect from South Carolina I mentioned earlier is a freak athlete, no doubt. But if they pass on him early, there are still others who fit that bandit mold, and the team might believe they can find better value without reaching. Remember, value is everything. Teams don't just draft the best player available. They draft the best player available at the right spot. That distinction matters more than people realize. Now let's wrap this segment with one more thought, and it's a big one. Everything we've talked about, quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, defensive tackles, safeties, it all points to one central theme. The Steelers are in a moment of transition. They're not in full rebuild mode, but they're definitely retooling. They know their identity. They know what kind of football they want to play. But to get there, they need to make the right decisions over these next few days. The draft is more than just picking names off a board. It's about direction. It's about culture. It's about setting the tone for what this team will be not just this season, but for years to come. And that's why this particular first-round pick feels so significant. It's not just a piece of the puzzle. It might be the start of a new picture entirely. So whatever happens Thursday night, expect the unexpected. The Steelers have options, flexibility, and a clear desire to build something sustainable. The only question now is, who will be the next name called to help shape that vision? We're going to break down even more possibilities and dig deeper into some of the other positions in the next segment. And hey, if you made it this far, you're clearly one of the diehards. Drop here we go in the comments if you're still with us. And let's keep this energy rolling as we head into what could be one of the most pivotal draft weekends in recent Steelers history. But before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to Steelers Nation Central and hit the like button on this video. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on the Pittsburgh Steelers. And don't forget to share your thoughts on the news in the comments below. The Pittsburgh Steelers have never been a franchise short on history, tradition, or grit. But the arrival of Baker Mayfield is something that has taken even the most seasoned fans by surprise, and it hasn't come quietly. The former number 1 overall pick touched down in Pittsburgh this week and was welcomed not with skepticism, but with celebration. A true party atmosphere surrounded his arrival, as fans flooded social media and local streets with excitement, waving terrible towels and donning newly minted black and gold Mayfield jerseys. After years of clashing with Mayfield as a rival in the AFC North during his time with the Cleveland Browns, the tide has turned. Now, the former Heisman winner is being embraced as the quarterback who could lead the Steelers into a new era. His entrance into the Steel City was more than just a routine airport greeting. It was a statement. Music, cheers, and even chants of "Here we go, Baker," echoed throughout the city, marking a new chapter for both player and team. For Pittsburgh, this isn't just a roster move. It's a bold message of intent. Mayfield arrives with playoff experience, a chip on his shoulder, and a kind of swagger that resonates with the blue-collar spirit of the city. For years, the Steelers have searched for a long-term successor to Ben Roethlisberger, and after trying several options, Baker's arrival feels different. It feels like hope. Whether he becomes a franchise savior or another chapter in the team's post-Roethlisberger journey remains to be seen. But one thing is clear. The city has welcomed Baker Mayfield with open arms and roaring voices. Pittsburgh is ready, and so is Baker. The party has started, and now, all eyes are on what comes next. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the Pittsburgh Steelers, make sure to subscribe to Steelers Nation Central and give this video a like. We always look forward to hearing your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.